So AI can drive transformation in a number of ways. First, AI can drive transformation by driving greater insight. And so we've seen a lot of benefits when you're dealing with vast volumes of data and the ability to extract insights from that data. So that's part one. I think part two is around personalization, right? So AI can be used to personalize the customer experience. Again, when you think about sort of what are the different behaviors, expectations of customers, you can drive much more personalized experiences for them. And then the third area is around efficiency, right? It's around productivity gains and driving productivity by leveraging AI to essentially make whatever processes, procedures you have be much more efficient. Those are three very transformative steps associated with AI. The other thing I will highlight, however, is as you get ready to deliver on those three transformative steps, the underlying steps necessary to be able to capture those three areas are also very transformative by themselves, right? You have to think about how do you get yourself ready for AI? This is around sort of the transformation that needs to happen in your underlying architecture. The fact that you have to sort of migrate or think about your cloud strategy. The fact that you have to think about your data strategy and make sure that you have your data ready in order to be able to use it for AI. So those are some of the things underlying that also need to be ready for that transformation. And so they feed off each other. Yeah, so I think there are a number of things that you have to keep in mind when you're pursuing AI and you're sort of scaling AI across your organization. I think the biggest takeaway I'll just highlight here is sort of, what we like to call sort of like the 30-70 rule, or the sort of 10-20-70 rule, which is the tools associated with AI, the models, et cetera, that represents really sort of 10 to 30% of the work. In reality, 70% of the work is around change management. It's around ways of working. So just because you have an AI model doesn't mean that it's going to be implemented or adopted successfully, right? A simple example of that is when you are looking at the productivity of your developers. A lot of companies are trying to leverage AI. Think of Copilot, for example, to enhance the productivity of their developers. But just presenting a Copilot sort of model to developers is not going to work. You actually have to instill a process by which you can manage that change. A lot of developers have habits that they've picked up over many years, maybe even over decades, and may be reluctant to use something like Copilot or don't know how to use it in their existing process. And so that 70% portion is around change management. It's about process. And a lot of people fail to take that into account. I think in addition to that, just a couple other things I'll highlight. AI can indeed be misused. And what I mean by that is, you do have things like bias, hallucinations associated with AI, and that's really important to take into account. A simple example of that is a few years ago, there was one financial services provider that was essentially providing, it was a credit provider that was treating women very differently than men, even though they had the same profile, right? And that was a bias inherent in the system. And you think about something like Gemini, which had some bad press with regards to sort of the type of output it was generating for some videos that were sort of inaccurate, right? And so there's a number of things that happen that you have to be really, really careful about as well. And then the final thing I'll just highlight is governance. It's really important to have a strong governance process around the use of AI. You think about data quality, data integrity, data anonymization. All these things are really important, and I think people sort of sometimes tend to underestimate the importance of this. But it's very, very important, and I think with the advent of potential regulation in the space of AI, it's really important to pay attention to this, pay attention to biases, and pay attention to all the different things that can go wrong. Yeah, no, look, it's a very good point. It can be very expensive. I think the first thing I like to tell companies is that you don't have to spend a lot of money necessarily to start getting engaged, right? And so the way I like to think about it is you can get engaged in three parts. The first part is you can engage with the ecosystem. That means reach out to journalists, reach out to venture capitalists, reach out to regulators, reach out to academics, and reach out to sort of practitioners. That's free. It doesn't cost you anything. And you do that, you start to develop some knowledge, some domain expertise around what it is that is relevant in the space, especially in the field of AI. The second thing I highlight for folks is you should start to experiment. And you can experiment small and then eventually gradually experiment big. And so you want to innovate and experiment, get your feet wet, get your toes wet. You definitely want to, have a team, fire up a team, and just start doing some use cases, right? Get familiar with it. And then the third thing is that I highly recommend to people is to, now that you've experimented, now that you have engaged sort of with the ecosystem, you want to partner, right? And so seek out partners, seek out firms, in the field of AI. You can seek out partners like OpenAI, right, Anthropic, et cetera, and start to partner with them regards to your experimentation. And so those are three things that I ask people. The first one and the third one, they're free, right? They don't cost you anything. It's the experimentation, and you can do experimentation at different levels. I think once you do that, you can be up and running. I think the final point I'll make just in terms of experimentation, you do have to have a very structured approach to how you're going to experiment. A lot of firms, and we've done a lot of surveys about this, a lot of firms tend to over experiment. They have way too many initiatives, and thus it becomes really difficult to see what the impact of those AI initiatives is. So you should really start off very focused, develop a very strong framework for how you approach experimentation, and then you can gradually expand that over time.